That's right, it most matters to provide leadership on the world stage in how you persecute gay people. So let's bring this back to Europe. What does London for secular Europe mean in the context of Uganda's anti-homosexuality bill? When it comes to moral ministry in Uganda, the Anglican Communion is a big player. The Church of Uganda is Anglican, not wholly unlike the existing laws against sodomy, which Britain put in place in the first place. The Church of England, in effect, is another little present that Blighty left behind, and which is mutating out of shape. The Church of Uganda looks to the Anglican Communion for guidance and moral authority, and although many of its leaders are known to express anti-gay sentiments at the drop of a hat, others within the Church are more liberal, and the Church of Uganda was described as split over how to respond to the anti-homosexuality bill. So how did Lambeth Palace exercise its moral authority? What did they say? For quite a while, nothing. Other Anglican groups spoke of the devastating silence from the Archbishop. The lesbian and gay Christian movement said they were dismayed and shocked at this silence from the archbishops. The C of E said it had its reasons for being quiet. They may even on the face of it, sound like they make a kind of sense. They were operating subtly, they said, rather than making demands directly to the Church of Uganda, they said. Contacts with Uganda were intensive but private, they said, because it was a sensitive issue to deal with behind closed doors, they said. But then something came along that was more important. Despite the recognised need to delicately dissuade the Ugandan Church from backing the anti-homosexuality bill, sometimes other things happen that simply must take precedence. Just a few days after saying it was trying its hardest to work with Uganda behind the scenes, the Church of England simply had to break its silence to reaffirm its stance against gay equality. Because, would you believe it, those naughty Episcopalians in the United States had gone ahead and appointed another gay bishop. In 2000 last year, and count that poll gay bishops. I'm sure this was a deeply shocking turn of events, which meant that Archbishop Williams simply had no choice but to criticise all that stuff about gender, to loosen up, maybe turn the tide. The anti-gay legislation goes out the window because it's necessary to cast aspersions of a 55-year-old woman who has been a good cleric in your church since 1981, and who, by the way, has been with her partner since I was 6 years old. Now, if a tactful approach was the order of the day with the Church of Uganda, then what kind of message did Lambeth think they were sending by criticising the appointment of Mary Glasspool? They chose that moment to create a furore in the Anglican Communion, re-intensifying both sides in a dispute right at the time when lives hang in the balance in Uganda. And now the Church of Uganda has come out. It is in favour of the aims of the bill. It wants to prohibit and penalise homosexuality. It wants to shut down human rights organisations and medical organisations that promote homosexuality. Because remember, if you're in favour of equality, then of course that means that you are promoting and attempting to recruit people into homosexuality. What does this come down to? This is not just a matter of a church in schism that can't control itself. The Church of England, which fails to outright condemn the obvious hatred and prejudice inherent in the Uganda bill, which fails to influence, let alone disassociate from a church which colludes with hatred. This church is your church. You're not C of E, you say? It's still your church. You're not a Christian? It's still your church. You're an atheist? It's still your church. It's our church. It's the established Church of England. If you think that bishops in the House of Lords aren't that big a deal, that the monarch operating as head of church and as head of state is a trifling matter, that the UK having an established church is just a benign tradition, then think about Uganda. Think about an unaccountable, unelected church hierarchy who deign to imagine that they represent the moral voice of Britain. It's out there criticising bishops and associating itself with a church of hatred.
Yeah.
Yes. It does in the name of England, in your name and my name, and especially in the names of the largely imaginary 70% of the population which, based on bad census data, it likes to pretend that it represents. Finally, in May 2001, the then Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger sent a letter to every one of about 5,000 bishops worldwide in the Catholic Church. Back then, Joe Ratzinger was working in the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, the very office, by the way, which ran the Inquisition, along with his friend Cardinal Bertoni. In the letter that they sent, Ratzinger and Bertoni asked every bishoply recipient to keep their copy of the letter in a locked safe. I don't know if the Catholic Church sends safes to all the bishops when they take office, but apparently they all have one to keep special secret letters in. The reason it was a very special secret letter is because it was about secret things, specifically keeping secret any accusations of child abuse by priests. It said that whatever little laws might exist in each bishop's diocese, the Church nevertheless claims all jurisdiction over its priests, specifically if their crime is sexual abuse, quote, perpetrated with a minor by a cleric. With a minor. You like that euphemism? It means paedophilia. The Church, Ratzinger and Bertoni said, has a right to hold its own inquiries behind closed doors to keep the evidence confidential, which is to say, to hide it from the authorities.
Shame. 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 Shame.
The letter concludes that cases of that kind are subject to the pontifical secret, which is another way of saying that as a bishop, if you do the right thing and you go to the relevant authorities, then you will lose your place in the afterlife. As a cardinal, Joe Ratzinger, the Pope, said that members of his church were above the law in criminal matters relating to the exploitation of the most vulnerable people in society. Their reputation was more important than the safety of many hundreds of children around the world. Last year, the Ryan Report showed the extent of child abuse in Catholic institutions throughout Ireland. The even more recent Commission of Investigation report in Dublin has shown that the Church not only knew about widespread paedophilia, but actively put systems in place to prevent justice time and time again. Cardinal Ratzinger said that preliminary investigations into claims of child sex abuse should go to him, not to the authorities. He presided, for a while, over a decades-long cover-up, which is still coming to light. What message, then, does it send to the victims of childhood sexual abuse anywhere in the world when we invite this man as an honoured state guest to Britain? In what direction are we pulling cords across the world when, as a nation state, we honour and fawn over someone who stuck two fingers up to the laws of just about every country on earth and said that he would deal with sex abuse behind closed doors, thank you very much, and did a downright crappy job of dealing with it at that?
Well said, well said.
Today is Valentine's Day. It can be hard to keep love in mind when we are provoked to righteous passion, but I don't want to hate. I don't want to hate one man or one belief or one church. Part of the reason I wanted to talk about the international impact of what we do in Great Britain and in Europe is because it helps to keep in mind the people who are affected, the people whose liberties and even very lives are threatened. Do not stand here today because you hate the Pope or you hate the Church or whatever else. Yes, feel impassioned by injustice, but feel it because you think on and understand and empathise with the victims of anti-secularism, the abused children that we know exist in droves because Rome thought it knew what was best, the women, 1 in 5 Brazilian women whose unsafe abortions result in hospitalisation because Rome knows what's best for them, gay people in Uganda, victimised and scapegoated out of fear and for political interest that the Church allows to go unchecked, the Christians in Pakistan and elsewhere, the people with minority beliefs, whether they're religious or non-religious, anywhere in the world, who are marginalised and silenced by authoritarian hierarchies and blasphemy laws and all the rest. When we stand up and criticise and say that our church doesn't speak in my name, when we do not honour the Pope, that we are not complicit in the intrusion in the church into national affairs, when we do this, let's be moved by a love for those people, the victims, not by a hatred for one man. Don't give him the satisfaction. Thank you.